Shall we play a game?
We got one person online. The workload is enough for like 10 users. I think we got a hacker.
Shall we play a game?
What are they doing to him? Breaking into his mind. It's like hacking a computer. All it takes is time.
Red alert! All hands to battle stations.
Hello, friend.
Welcome to Red Spy 365.
Shall we play a game?
Hey, good morning, how are we? Although it's not morning for me, it's 10:32 at night. What it is, I'm actually just testing right now. And so I thought I'd kind of do a podcast. I've just recertified my CCIE. So I've got another 2 years as a CCIE security. I actually done a bit of recertification this year. Recertified my SANS GSE as well. So that's 4 years. So I'm all up to date, which is good. If you know what it's like, is you work really hard, you get your certifications, and then you have to maintain that level. And it's hard because you have this everyday life that gets in the way in your job, and it's not always as per the book as it should be. So you have to sit down, study, go with the books, go with the flow, learn things, do what needs to be done, to maintain those certifications, maintain that skill set, because it does change all the time. I always tell people, it's not like we're in an industry where it's kind of like an English teacher. Shakespeare 2.0 isn't going to come out tomorrow and sort of blow your mind about Shakespeare. We're really in an industry where, new things happen all the time. This is part and parcel. I guess this is why you've got to love it, because if you kind of don't like learning, or if you don't like new things, then IT is probably not for you, because it does change all the time. And on top of which, pen testing especially changes all the time. Although saying that, I guess everybody changes, everything changes. The world's a good place. It's a good place it's a really good time to be in IT, I think. I think this is like the best time to be. I also think it's one of the best times to be in security. You see it, and one of the things that I was looking at, and obviously I do the morning briefs as well, but one of the things I was looking at today was obviously we talked about ransomware and how the rise of ransomware and really again it's just that I guess that vein that runs through all the security basics. Keep it simple, stupid, KISS. It's all the most basic stuff. Getting the basics right. For some of this ransomware to work, there's got to be a lot of technical failures. It's not going to be one single failure that happened. So one of the things I thought I would do, I would look at, just go through the news. I've seen, some of the interesting stuff that was going on with, medical devices. We're truly looking at this Internet of Things as a threat surface. And the humans, we're a threat surface, not through, just social engineering, but also now through, I guess, the medical devices that maybe keep us alive. And it's kind of mean to hunt down. It's the kind of the world that we live in. I always, it's one of those things. I was just looking at YouTube, and I was just looking at, there is good in the world. Do a search on there is good in the world, and you always get some fantastic videos to remind you that it's not just scumbags that try and hack medical devices to kill people. Even obviously we're trying to make the world a safer place, but there is good in the world. In security especially, and there's lots of things that go on. Regardless of the ransomware, regardless of what's going on, there is good in the world. That's why I was just watching a video because, man, I guess after a while you sit there and watch the news. I think I'm just going to avoid watching the news. It gets depressing after a while. So security-wise, what we're seeing, obviously we're seeing this on the news all the time right now. Silicon Valley and its role in big tech and big data. And I'm a small cog in a big wheel. Small cog in a big machine. Called security, but man, it's all I tell people is keep the basics, do the basics, patch your systems, application whitelisting, two-factor authentication, let alone changing the passwords often, all the other super basic stuff. If you can get the basics right, then you have a pretty good foundation, and that's coming from someone that hey, I'm just sort of doing web application testing this evening, looking for SQL injections on things, and it's just doing the basics right, not just the coding, but the basics of fundamental of administration of a system. I think at times we can get too focused on the next shiny thing that occurs, but getting the basics right, reduce threat surface. Don't open ports to the big wide world that you don't need to open. Patch your systems, application whitelisting. Allow only things to run. Make sure you're up to date on all your third-party stuff, and then obviously it goes into passwords and two-factor authentication. These are all, what I consider basics. And, it's 2019, and I've been doing this for a long time, and we still ain't got the basics right. So let's see what's going on in some of the world of the hackers. Let's have a look at some of the sites that I normally, trundle around looking at. Yeah, that was an interesting one. I saw, I've been reading up on this about the guy that created the OmniRat. Now, if rats are remote admin tools, and sometimes there's a legitimate. We have legitimate use rats. In fact, sometimes there's whole companies used to sell service. GoToAssist or any kind of tools that allow you to administer a system remotely or administer multiple systems remotely. But it seems to be, this guy created the OmniRat. Again, it's Germany. Germany's got a pretty strict law as well on, creating malware and creating sort of security tools that could be used maliciously. And they raided and basically, took him offline. Looks like he's probably, if the way things work, he's probably going to spend, I don't know if he's going to spend some jail time, or I don't quite know what's going on here. But I've been keeping a little eye on it. Because obviously, when you create tools or you create services, what he was doing was that, obviously some bad guys were using his tool for bad purposes or illicit purposes. And, I guess he kind of caught the attention that, hey, bad guys are using your things. I don't know if it kind of looked like that he was actively promoting it, or at some point, maybe that's where he fell foul of the law. Because obviously things like Metasploit or Cobalt Strike, these are used. In fact, there's an APT, Cobalt Strike gang. But, I know Raphael doesn't promote it and wouldn't allow bad guys to use his tool if he knew. I guess it's kind of like if you make a screwdriver, someone can use it to screw in a screw or use it to jimmy a window. Is it your fault that someone's used it for jimmying a window? That was never its intended purpose. However, if, I guess the same analogy would be, if you've made a tool, especially a hack tool, and it's being used by bad guys, is there a way to put a kill code in there? It's kind of interesting when you think about it. If you're into creating tools, do you have a kill code? Do you keep track of who's using it, where that software, what happens if it gets out? I was always one of the worries with Red Spy for me was, what if, someone, it got out? Now, at that point, we have things in place that, we keep track, and we have things that enable us to identify it. But you kind of have to think ahead of the what ifs. Because, Red Spy was never designed for any of the bad people. That's for sure. It's designed for, to find and help the good. I always say, if you can create a tool, you can create a service, or you can create history. I want to create history. And we really want to get on the side of good. The idea is that the red helps the blue team become sharper. That's essentially what we're trying to do. Trying to find those bad ways in before the real bad guys do. So that's interesting. The other part, we've been talking about, if you've listened to me for a bit, we've gone on about this ransomware thing. But obviously, it's big business, isn't it? 1.1 million. 2 weeks, Florida's paid out 1.1 million in Bitcoin. As you get older, I think you realise the older adages are true. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and I got a feeling at times that the tech guys, us guys at the bottom, or us guys that understand where the risk is, it's not being portrayed to the guys up top. They don't know the risk, or it's either they don't know, don't understand, and if they don't understand, that's both of our problems. We need to be able to explain it better, and they need to sort of learn it better. It's kind of like, I always say, these guys are very, very smart. And I think at times, is it a case of we're expecting them to come down to our level, or we're going up to their level? That was my schnauzer. I have a little schnauzer called Liberty Bell. In fact, she sits with me when I pen test. She's especially good at SQL injections. As I said, I'm going to have to do a YouTube video so you can see Liberty Bell. She's just a little miniature schnauzer. It's the cutest thing in the world. But she does have a tendency, just for no apparent reason, at 10:40 at night, just to start barking at things. I think she's like that emu. In fact, I think what it is, I'm talking to the computer, and it just makes her mad, because I should be talking, obviously, to her in her world. This is Libby's world, so I should be talking to her. But Liberty, we're trying to talk about, ransomware. And I know maybe that was her opinion on it, that, hey, sometimes there is a legitimate reason. But more importantly, we need to use just as much money to do the basics. Because I would say there's got to be, a lot of technical failures. That's not just one single technical failure. That's a lot of technical failures for that ransomware to occur. And unfortunately, at times we see it, Again, sometimes we can get focused on that too new shiny thing and not concentrate on the basics. So that's the mantra. Basics. Get the basics right. So I can't remember. There was some cyber. We've seen a lot of nation-state stuff going on. I'm not even going to get into nation. Spies will spy. That's what we do. We'll accuse the Russians. The Russians accuse us. We'll accuse the Iranians. I mean, it's what spies do. Spy. Unfortunately, we're all sharing the same platform, and we, like most things, we can become collateral damage. Just like anything else, we become collateral damage in a cyber war or a cold cyber war, whatever we want to call it. At times, we're collateral damage, and unfortunately, this is what happens. Now, we hope that, obviously, I think you're seeing the early start of this, or probably about 4 or 5 years into it heavily. But we probably need, the spies, we need to be very careful about what we do. And that's coming from someone that works in the intelligence community. I think there needs to be, some care and attention, because in our world, collateral damage can escalate very, very quickly. Flash worms and things like that, it can escalate very quickly. So I do believe we have to be careful. So we got some, obviously there's, some vulnerabilities found. We had the account takeover vulnerability, EA Games. I guess it's a problem, especially if you reuse your passwords. Hey, don't reuse passwords. Playing, the other one was the VLC, playing untrusted videos on VLC media player, quite popular. Again, patch, update. A lot of this is like, patch, update. Of course, we had the earlier Oracle WebLogic flaw. How many times I've been involved in a breach investigation for an Oracle WebLogic flaw? As soon as we see it, we tell everybody that we know that's under our protection, hey, this has got, do it now. Whatever it takes, just do it now. Patch it, fix it, do whatever, because this seems to be a go-to at times for certain organizations, and we do see it quite a lot. I'm just looking at one of the forums. Is there anything of interest? No, it seems relatively quiet. Yep. And again, obviously, it was a good one. 1 terabyte of police body camera videos found lounging around in public databases. Again, the cloud does not mean that you are no longer responsible for anything. Just because you put it somewhere doesn't mean that, you're now you've lost your responsibility of it. Bruce Schneier's leaving IBM. That's kind of cool. Yeah, never saw that. But, we actually saw a little rise in Bitcoining again. I wonder if that's to do with, sort of the business model. But we're definitely seeing I know we're seeing some increase in Bitcoin mining attacks, as well as the ransomware. So the model seems to be, multifaceted right now. What's the price of Bitcoin? Has it gone up recently? I've not been following it. Normally I do. Let's have a look. Bitcoin price, what are we sitting at? Yeah, it kind of sort of trended up a little bit. It's kind of plateaued. But yeah, 10,000. I mean, it dropped, that's not bad. I mean, it's as it's gone up. I guess the good news is if they're bothering, if it means that they're not going to be bothering you through ransomware and doing Bitcoin mining, I guess that's less destructive. However, they're talking about data from it's lost its grip on the 11,000. Well, maybe that, if Bitcoin mining drops, we might see then a rise back in ransomware. So, but I got a feeling this is now a new business model. We're seeing the emergence of multifaceted business models, doing Bitcoin mining and ransomware, whichever effectively works best for them. I'm just looking to see if one of the things I always look at as well is to see if sometimes people email me late at night. The way the time zone works is sometimes works for me, sometimes work against me. But I usually go to sleep with issues, and I usually wake up to issues. The sun never sets on the fire. But I'm not complaining. It's not like I'm digging ditches for a living in the cold. I do something that I enjoy. Not many people can say that. So no, that looks relatively quiet. We're a couple of days away now from the release of 13.2. I know those of you on Red Spray, you've seen the roadmap, and it's pretty exciting actually. I think 13.2, 13.3 are, they make the product rock solid, and that's really important for me, especially with 13.3 where we've added the business layer onto it. And I might do a whole podcast at one time on the business layer, because I think that's really interesting. I think once we settle on the final metrics and the display, how the visualization is, maybe I'll explain to you how we arrived at that and the thinking behind it and the thought process. Because there's been a lot of discussion. It's something I think that is missing from a lot of services. Maybe because they don't want to show what they do, or maybe they're frightened to show what they do. But I think the idea is that we want to be able to show the value that we add. And that's important. I think you've got to be able to show the value you add. And I understand that. It's kind of funny because, from the tech world, sometimes we don't see or we don't adhere to the value that we add. Or we think to ourselves, we just assume, hey, everybody must get it. And that's not always the case. I think at times we have to take a step back and listen to those around us and understand what they require from us and see if we can address it and do it. And I think with 13.2 and 13.3, we definitely are. We're definitely focusing on the web application side of things and making it grow as a solid product, being able to sort of base everything off of the pen test report, because like we said, the pen test report is always the main thing. So that's where the analysts' interpretation goes into play, and so everything gets based upon that, and so there's no false positives whatsoever being sent to the IRC. And if you can imagine, if you're not sending a false positive to the IRC, that means you can really create some interesting scenarios based upon the fact that you're never going to see a false positive. And that's where, we'll talk about the emergence of significant events. And hopefully when I get 13.2, we're going to go through and we'll be able to sort of walk through it. And that's kind of like what I want to do is, in the next couple of podcasts, I guess, talk about the business level or the business review and sort of talk about how that's impacted us and how we're maturing, but also how the roadmap is sort of emerging to be much more solid. How 13.2, 13.3 definitely adds that business layer. That's really going to be one podcast, and obviously I want to do another podcast just on the new version and explain why we did what we did and why we added and what we are going to be adding. It's kind of like a part A, part B. 13 was a good jump for us. It was a big jump, but 13.2, 13.3, they're almost like 13.2, which is like 13A and 13B. They kind of complete a 13 for me, and that enables us to move into sort of a tandem development with 13.4 and 14. Obviously, 14 being huge for me. Very much working on that. But it's interesting, like I said, it's a different thing every day. It's something new. Liberty Bell loves it. She loves to sit here and watch. I'd probably bore her. I'd probably bore a dog, bore a dog as well, let alone anybody else. But she doesn't have a choice because she has to sit with. Well, actually, she does have a choice. I guess she could fuss and run off. but she just sits there and watches the screen with me. I don't think she's excited about what I do. I think she's more excited that the mouse gets moved around. That seems to be her big thing. But I pretend.
Shall we play a game?
We got one person online. The workload is enough for like 10 users. I think we got a hacker.
Shall we play a game?
What are they doing to him? Breaking into his mind. It's like hacking a computer. All it takes is time.
Red alert! All hands to battle stations.
Hello, friend. Hello, friend.
Welcome to Red Spy 365.
Shall we play a game?